Kimberly Thurston, and today we're going to speak about family preservation versus child safety in foster care laws. Every year, hundreds and thousands of children in the United States are removed from their homes due to neglect, physical abuse, extreme poverty, or immediately stressful situations. During the last 2 decades, there has been a shifting dynamic between conflicting goals: protecting children and preserving families. This dynamic continues to be reflected in changing policies and practices. From my own personal testimony, I have had 2 encounters with the foster care system. Each case turned out completely different. When almost 5 years old, both my sister and I were removed from the home and placed into foster care system. This was due to potentially dangerous situation rather than an already dangerous occurrence. We remained in foster care for 6 months, and then we were reunified with our mother and our other siblings. We are to this day good friends with our foster family. The second encounter was when my niece and nephew were removed from their home. The oldest child, the girl, had received a broken nose and a black eye and was not given medical attention for another 4 days prior to the incident. The youngest, the boy, was removed immediately at birth. They were placed in a temporary home until the relatives had had proper screenings. The fingerprints done to receive them. This process took 3 days. The children remained in their relatives' placement for 6 months, when it was decided that over the course of another 6 months, the children would be reunified with their mother. The children were reunified with their mother, and within 2 months, they were taken back into the Child Protective Services for a potentially dangerous situation and child neglect. Family reunification can mean the physical return of the child or youth to the parents or caretakers before the return of legal custody, as when the Child Welfare Agency continues to supervise the family for some period of time, often referred to as a trial home visit. Reunification is considered achieved when both care and custody are returned to parents or guardians and the child or youth is discharged from the child welfare system. My goal is not to diminish the intentions of the family preservation advocacy. My intentions are to reflect the flaw of the push for child welfare workers to respond to cases with hopes of reunification. It is said that legislation was concerned that too many children were being removed and placed into foster care without adequate efforts being made to keep the family together. As a result, services to support and preserve families received attention and additional targeting funds. Now, how do you address situations where children are removed from their homes due to neglect, inadequate living situations, or violence not directed to the child? The idea is that these things can be addressed and corrected by helping parents identify meaningful goals, build motivation for change, and target the specific changes they would like to make. If a child is not physically abused, then it can be difficult to identify the abuse that is occurring. What is often not taken into consideration is that children exposed to family violence are more likely to be violent. Children who witness violence are at greater risk of repeating the violence in their own families. Children who witness this violence are often abused themselves. However, they can be harmed regardless of whether they are directly abused. Children in violent family situations may experience post-traumatic stress disorder, physical conditions such as stress rashes, severe behavioral or academic problems, and increased delinquency. These effects can often go undetected, undocumented, and untreated. Also, a major challenge with the program is getting parents to engage in family preservation interventions due to the fear and shame they often experience in being identified in a child protection report and in dealing with child welfare personnel. Although the child welfare system seems to recognize the stigma attached to cases such as these, an attempt to train social workers to demonstrate a sense of empathy and understanding about how parents' own earlier experiences of family breakdown, abuse, and neglect contribute to the parenting problems. Their first response is to target the parents' immediate practical needs, like transportation and housing. They claim that parents who receive help with immediate and worrying needs are likely to be more hopeful and less distrusting. The worker-client relationship may be a particularly important aspect of intervention in family preservation programs because the worker plays a role in determining whether a family keeps or loses their children, and the laws reflect this idea. The fault in this method is that when focusing on parents' needs, the key elements can be missed. Professionals have frequently failed to speak to children directly. Possibly the single most significant practice failing throughout the majority of these serious case reviews is that failure of all professionals to see and speak to the children. They do not listen to what they say or observe how they are and take serious the accounts of their views of supporting their needs. This statement is not meant to conclude that professionals do not aim to meet the needs of children. When children are placed into foster care programs, they are often provided with a CASA worker, as well as a mental health nurse. CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocate. These people are trained volunteers who are assigned to each child to care for and advocate for the child throughout their entire experience in the foster care program. The child's CASA volunteer will intentionally spend time with the child, whether they are in out-of-home placement or reunified. The best part of the program is that the same volunteer will be with the child throughout the entire experience in the system. Mental health nurses are less relational than the CASA worker, but do speak to the children with the goal of identifying and defining the mental repercussions in cases where children have been abused. The professionals provided to meet the needs of the children, the CASA worker and the mental health professional assigned to the child, do speak to the child, but rather than speaking to the court, they are allowed to provide statements to the social worker assigned to the case. The child's attorney often doesn't even meet the children. The social worker essentially plays the middleman for conveying important information to the judge and to the attorneys. Some identified benefits to preservation would ideally include more permanent, stable placement, which supports stable family living, and state and local agencies can realize cost benefits by reducing the number of children and youth in care. It costs roughly $3,500 every 6 months for a child to remain in out-of-home care. There are a variety of forms of out-of-home care, some more cost-efficient than others. There is group home, foster care placement, and relative placement, just to name a few. Almost 1/4 of children who leave foster care return to the system within 3 years. This can be less cost-efficient because funds are provided to meet the needs for family reunification, transportation, Section 8 assistance, parenting classes, and the like. Something we should be thinking about is whether or not the assured safety of a child should wear a price. The reunification process is flawed, but some may also find flaws in the foster care placement process. How do crooked foster families who are only in it for the money play a role in the reunification issue? A common question is, if they are just taking foster children because they are in it for the money, how do we know that they won't advocate that the child does not become reunified? The goal of the Child Welfare Services is not to reunify the children in their children in their homes, is to put the child in a more permanent placement. They will often aim to place children in foster care families that would be capable and open to adoption possibilities. Because in reunification processes, the foster family actually does not receive an opportunity to speak in direction of this issue, their intentions don't affect this process. But when going into the foster care system as potential temporary parents or guardians of a misplaced child, there is a screening process that lasts approximately 3 days. The family also receives a class notifying them of who may see the child when. For example, when the parents will be permitted to see the children and under what circumstances it would be okay to allow the parent to see them. Another major concern that is addressed during the orientation is that anyone who will be around the child for more than 48 hours will need to receive the same screening process as the foster care parents if they are 18 years or older. These screenings are a one-time occurrence, but they may be redone for different case numbers. For example, I have had 5 separate screenings for 5 separate cases. I was not required to be screened for the first 3 children because I was under the age of 18 when we received them. When I became 18, I was required to receive the screenings. These processes are as effective as they can be to attempt to be. In all honesty, the money, $3,500 every 6 months, provided for receiving a foster child really isn't that much more income when you consider the expenses of raising that child, unless you don't feed them or provide all of their necessities. To bring this rabbit back on the designated trail, I would like to point out that anyone who is living with or is staying with the parent that the child is being reunified with during the 6-month reunification process must also receive a background check, but it is not required that they be fingerprinted. My conclusions are that children who are not visibly abused physically can often have other negative impacts that are overlooked as deciding factors in the reunification ideal. Child welfare professionals often fail to speak to the children or take into consideration the child's account. Although it may seem that reunification is the most beneficial alternative financially, if the children are being re-entered into the system, then in reality the costs are equal, if not more. The safeties of a child should not wear a price. My intentions are not to disregard the efforts made by child preservation advocacy, but to shed light on the flaws that must be addressed if we are going to adequately look out for the well-being of children who will someday be our future parents. Thank you.